So now we will see what is project management process groups and knowledge areas mapping. The knowledge area that we are focusing here is the project scope management, and while mapping this particular knowledge area to the project management process groups, we can see that the collection of the software requirements and defining the scope and creating the work breakdown processes belongs to the planning phase of this project management process group. So we can say that all of these three processes will be conducted in the planning phase of project management. Finally, the verifying scope and control scope processes will be conducted in the monitoring and controlling phases of project management process groups. The first process that we will consider is collecting requirements. A requirement is a condition or capability or the ability that must be met or possessed by a system, a product, or we can say a service, a result, or the component to satisfy a contract between the customer and the developer, or any standard or specification or other formal document is called the requirement. Basically, a requirement is that particular condition that must be fulfilled by the product produced in this particular project in order to satisfy an agreement or a contract or some specific standard or set of specifications or other formal document. So for some IT projects, it is very helpful to divide the set of requirements development into categories called elicitation, analysis, specifications, and validation. So for IT projects, we will divide the requirements development processes into set of different steps or categories. Number one, we will perform the requirements elicitation process. It means in this particular step or category, we have to gather the related requirements of the software. After gathering the requirements, we will perform the analysis of those set of documented requirements. Then we have to formally specify those set of requirements in their detail in a technical document which is called SRS. And finally, we will pass that particular document which is called SRS to the customer in order to validate the set of requirements we gather in the elicitation phase. So all of these categories belongs to the requirements development process. So it is important to use the iterative or the cyclic approach or the repetitive approach to define the set of requirements, since they are often unclear early in a project. So in order to gather the effective set of requirements, we need to perform a repetitive process to gather the set of requirements that must be clear early in the project. So now we will see what are the methods that we can consider in order to collect the software requirements. We have the number of techniques that we can adopt in order to elicitate the set of software requirements. So those techniques can be the interviews, the focus group and the facilitated workshops, the group creativity and decision making techniques, the questionnaires and the surveys, the observation, the prototyping and the set of software tools. So these are those sort of techniques that we already studied in much detail, and these techniques will be used in order to gather the software requirements. we will see what is documenting requirements. Requirements documents are often generated by the software and includes text, images, diagrams, videos, and other medias. So the requirements documents are generated by the softwares, and it includes the text, the combination of images, the set of diagrams, and the videos plus some other related media. They are often broken down into different categories, such as the functional services, the performance-related requirements, the service-oriented requirements, the quality-oriented requirements, the training requirements, and so on. So, the set of requirements that we will document will be the functional set of requirements, the service-oriented requirements, the performance-oriented requirements, the quality-oriented requirements, the training requirements, in order to build a complete and a consistent and a quality-oriented system. So it is important to document all of these types of different categories of requirements. A requirements management plan describes how project requirements will be analyzed, documented, and managed. So it's a document which is called Requirements Management Plan, and it contains all of the project requirements that must be analyzed to get the detailed insight of those requirements, and then to write those requirements in a specific document and to manage all of the changes inside those requirements is basically called a requirements management plan. A requirements traceability matrix, which is also called RTM, is a table that lists the set of requirements and their various attributes of each requirement plus the status of the requirements to ensure that the requirements are addressed. So basically it is a table that will contain all of the requirements with the appropriate set of attributes in order to assess or ensure that these requirements are considered or addressed in the particular software or not. So, for example, we have a sample requirement traceability matrix over here. As you all can see, this matrix contains the requirement number, which is 32, and the name of the requirement is laptop memory, and the category is basically the hardware category, and the source of this particular requirement is basically the project charter and the corporate laptop specifications. And in order to check the status, we will see that it is completed. Laptops ordered meet requirement by having 4 GB of memory. So this is how we can present the set of requirements using a requirements traceability matrix in order to document the requirement number, name, category, source, and the status of the required set of requirements. So next we will see that what is defining the scope. Key inputs for preparing the project scope statement includes the project charter, requirements documentation, the organizational process assets such as different policies, procedures related to the scope statements, as well as the project files and the lesson learned from the previous similar projects. So in order to get the requirements which will be the part of the project includes the following key inputs: the project charter, the requirements documentation, the organizational process assets such as different policies and the procedures related to the project scope statements, the project files and the lesson learned from the previous similar projects. So these are all those sources through which we can define the scope of our project. So these are the key important set of inputs in order to prepare the project scope management. So as time progresses, the scope of the project should become more clear and specific. With the passage of time, we will get the better idea of the system. And this better idea of the system will lead us to the clear and complete specification of the project. And the scope of the project will become more clear and specific and understandable.